I remember when I was a child, I begged my mother for months to buy me the VHS tape of the movie Sister Act as a Christmas present. I was very happy when I opened the gift that Christmas day. Since then, I have watched the movie so many times that I cannot count. I still clearly remember the scene where Dolores Van Cartier walked into the convent with a sparkling sequin outfit, then suddenly sang My Guy, making the nuns astonished. Or the climax when the Pope visited and the whole convent exploded with the energetic gospel version of I Will Follow Him. Those moments echo in my mind like an unforgotten part of childhood memory. But as I dug deeper over the years, I began noticing strange little details I'd completely overlooked as a kid. Did you know the director drew inspiration for the film from a nun who once shared an on-screen kiss with Elvis Presley? Or that Bette Midler was almost cast in the lead role but turned it down out of fear her fans wouldn't accept it, only to regret the decision later? And then there were the nights when the nuns on screen slipped out together to gamble, smoke and drink in their black habits, sending the whole city buzzing with disbelief. Today, we will reopen the darkest and strangest backstage doors of Sister Act 15. Inspired by a Hollywood starlet who became a nun after kissing her co-star, we cannot deny that the appearance of Sister Act was a breakthrough in Hollywood comedy films in the 90s. But few people know that to achieve that success, the creative team, most of them Jewish and knowing very little about the internal operations of Catholicism, had to seek real inspiration. Before Bette Midler left the project, Paul Rudnick went to the Regina Loudis Abbey in rural Connecticut, where the old stone walls and echoing bells created a quiet atmosphere far from the glamour of cinema. There, he found the story of Mother Dolores Hart, the actress who once caused a sensation when she kissed Elvis Presley on screen in Loving You in 1957. Only 24 years old, she suddenly gave up her brilliant career and entered religious life for real at this very abbey, living the rest of her life as a Benedictine nun. Rudnick did not meet her directly. She lived in strict seclusion, but he exchanged letters with Mother Dolores and collected details through other sisters, letting that spirit seep into the script. Although she left Hollywood early, she still keeps her status as a voting member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences to this day. A strange connection between two worlds. Her later advice to Rudnick: do not make her too religious. Help the film avoid an artificial moral tone and remain cheerful and accessible. 14. The studio once wanted Dolores to have a romantic relationship. Every time we see Dolores on screen, with her radiant smile, echoing voice, and her nun's habit flying in the wind, we easily assume that Hollywood simply let her shine freely. But in reality, in the 90s, studios always worried that lacking a romantic angle would make audiences turn away. Before Whoopi Goldberg officially took the role, the script was revised many times to add some romance for Dolores. Sometimes it was a love story with a witty detective investigating a theft at the convent. Sometimes it was a young, handsome priest gradually drawn to her charm. Those ideas were discussed in closed meeting rooms in Burbank, amid cigarette smoke and cold coffee, because Disney believed that a comedy about nuns without some romance would be hard to sell. They feared that audiences, especially female audiences, needed a Hollywood-style happy ending, a hug, a kiss, or at least a love-struck gaze between two characters. However, the deeper they explored the idea, the more they realized it clashed too strongly with religion. A Catholic nun having a romantic relationship with a priest or a detective could easily provoke controversy, even harsh criticism from the Catholic community, a group already sensitive about how Hollywood portrayed convents. In the end, after many tense debates, they dropped everything. Dolores remained pure, without needing romantic love to shine. That decision helped Sister Act become more authentic and accessible, letting the laughter come from music and sisterhood instead of old and stale motifs. 13. The film began shooting without a completed script. Few people know that when the crew of Sister Act started filming in September 1991, the script was still not completed. a situation quite common in Hollywood in the 90s, but this time it was truly chaotic. After Bette Midler withdrew and Whoopi Goldberg took the role, Disney only allowed 2 weeks to overhaul the script, from changing the character's name to Dolores Van Cartier, because Whoopi liked that name, to adjusting the entire tone to suit her style. Filming and rewriting happened in parallel. New pages were brought to the Reno set every day. Director Emil Ardolino had to manage between shooting scenes and adjusting dialogue on the spot. The atmosphere on set was full of papers flying everywhere, rushed meetings between takes, and the pressure of time weighing down. Whoopi Goldberg, dissatisfied with some parts, personally called Carrie Fisher, her friend and famous tip script doctor, to come and put out the fire. Carrie, along with Nancy Myers and Robert Harling, participated in revisions, adding sharp and humorous lines, helping the character Dolores become more lively. The original screenwriter, Paul Rudnick, seeing his work no longer resembling his own child, requested to use the pen name Joseph Howard in the credits, a quiet but meaningful decision. Amid the long, exhausting days, the crew still tried to keep pace, and this chaos unintentionally created a real vitality for the film. Finally, when the word "cut" echoed for the last time in December, they had a completed work, thanks to silent efforts behind the scenes. 12. The nuns drank alcohol, smoked cigarettes, and gambled after filming hours. If in the film we see the nun Whoopi Goldberg leading the choir with an echoing gospel voice, while the other nuns quietly prayed under convent candlelight, then it may be surprising to know that behind the scenes, the nuns on screen had strange hobbies as well. During filming in Reno, the casino city of Nevada in the 90s, with flashing neon lights and slot machine bells echoing, Kathy Najimy, Sister Mary Patrick, and Wendy McKenna, Sister Mary Robert, kept their long black habits, ordered red wine and crispy French fries right in the hotel room. When room service knocked, they sat staring at the TV playing adult films, making the young server blush and stutter, while the two sisters giggled. Not only that, they went out to the casino, sat at the Blackjack 21 table. Wendy smoked a Marlboro cigarette. Kathy placed some chips, the cocktail glass in front of them shining under flickering lights. Gamblers around stared, whispering, "Did the Vatican open a lounge bar in the desert?" as Kathy later recalled in an interview. Those moments helped them release stress after long filming days, amid Nevada dust and Disney pressure. That worldliness unintentionally created bonding, making the singing and joyful scenes in the film more authentic. When returning to the set, they were still gentle nuns, but everyone knew behind the habit were ordinary people, full of life and sometimes a bit wild. 11. Bette Midler almost played the lead, then refused and regretted. Few people know that the script of Sister Act was originally written for Bette Midler, one of the most magnetic actresses of American stage and cinema in the late 80s. For Midler, such a project was not unfamiliar. She could sing, she could be funny, and she had enough presence to lead a film. But then came something that young people today might find difficult to imagine. Midler feared her fans would not accept the image of her wearing a nun's habit. Refusing a role at that time happened quietly, without noise. The studio did not blame Midler. They simply reopened the casting list. But for the producers, it was a different race, finding a replacement without losing the spirit of the story. The final answer was Whoopi Goldberg, who brought a very different energy, not like Midler, not replacing Midler, just opening a new reading of the character. Sister Act was so successful that Midler later admitted she regretted it. There was no bitterness in that statement, only the regret of a moment that missed by a few centimeters. Hollywood is full of such stories. A nod that came half a second late, a missed phone call, and the history of a film changes direction. The interesting thing is that even though Midler did not participate, audiences still associated Sister Act with her era, as if the film still belonged to that generation. 10. Sister Act turned Whoopi into the highest paid actress in Hollywood. On the day Sister Act was released, No one predicted that the film would not only make Whoopi Goldberg shine, but also change the salary structure for actresses in Hollywood. Before that, the highest pay mostly belonged to male actors. Female actors, even famous ones, were still assumed to have a lower cost. Whoopi entered negotiations for the second film in that context, and she chose a completely different method, not asking for more, but using strategy. She asked Disney to release Sarafina in the United States, a South African film about apartheid history that Disney had no plan to distribute. The request sounded strange, but it forced the studio to negotiate more seriously, and when the second film was approved, Whoopi became the highest paid actress at that time. No one called it a victory, only a small shift in the industry, but younger people later looked back and called it a power move. Call it whatever. The important thing is that it opened a door that few dared to knock before. And then Sister Act continued to live on television, replayed on cable channels in the afternoon, then on VHS tapes, where many families still remember rewinding the scene of the choir singing for the first time. 9. Disney was sued for plagiarism. Sister Act was certainly a favourite part of our daily relaxation menu as children. But later, I was surprised to learn that the film I loved had been sued twice for plagiarism. The first case happened in 1993, only 1 year after the film's release. Donna Douglas, famous for playing Ellie Mae Clampett in The Beverly Hillbillies, and her partner Kurt Wilson sued Disney, Whoopi Goldberg, Bette Midler, and the production companies for $200 million. They claimed that Sister Act took ideas from the book A Nun in the Closet, which they had optioned in 1985, developed into a script and sent to Disney, Goldberg and Midler 3 times in 1987 to 1988. The lawsuit listed over 100 similarities between their script and the film. Disney offered a $1 million settlement, but Douglas refused, wanting to go to the end. In the end, the court ruled in favor of Disney and the defendants. According to Kurt Wilson, they would have to copy it verbatim for us to win. The second case came later in 2011 when Harlem nun Deloy Blakely, also Queen Mother Dr. Deloy Blakely, sued Disney and Sony Pictures. She claimed that her 1987 autobiography, The Harlem Street Nun, about a young black nun who sang well, served the poor and street youth in Harlem, was the origin for the character Dolores. She had sent a 3-page synopsis to a producer and later demanded $1 billion for breach of contract, misappropriation of image, and unjust enrichment. She represented herself in court. At first, she withdrew the old complaint to file a stronger new one in 2012, but the New York Supreme Court dismissed it entirely in early 2013, awarding no compensation. What is memorable here is not winning or losing, but how Sister Act went from an uncertain script, then became a cultural product, then became a legal object. A film sometimes has a life longer than cinemas. It enters courtrooms, cable television, law libraries, and the memory of those who once watched it on a small screen in their living rooms. 8. Kathy Najimy found the key to acting thanks to a television host. Do you know that to play the nun Mary Patrick, Kathy Najimy had to find for the character a type of energy that was difficult to describe? Cheerful, but not naive. Lively, but not silly. Najimy said she tried many methods, from watching documentaries about convents to reading books about Catholic life, but everything still did not fall into place. One evening, when turning on the TV, she saw Mary Hart, the host of Entertainment Tonight, speaking with a steady, bright voice, spreading interest in every story without showing sarcasm. Najimy realized that was the key point. Innocence was not lack of knowledge, but pure joy toward the world. When she brought that voice into the film, Mary Patrick suddenly became a character who made the audience smile. Not the type of comedy that required loud laughter, but warmth that seeped into the scenes like breath. That was also the reason Mary Patrick was never turned into a stupid person, a type of character that comedy films often used at that time. Older audiences watching Sister Act often said, "I have met someone like that in church," and that was the greatest compliment for an actor. During breaks between scenes, Najimi still kept that demeanour. Not flamboyant, not seeking attention, only gently talking with everyone. And sometimes, that attitude was what helped a character stand firm in the memory of the audience longer than the lines themselves. 7. Whoopi was angry at Disney to the point of refusing to promote. I still remember that every time Whoopi appeared, the whole theatre burst into laughter with her radiant smile, warm and distinctive voice, and the way she turned the convent into a lively stage. So I always imagined that the person playing this role must be someone pleasant in real life, but it turned out to be the opposite. Whoopi Goldberg had a very strong personality, straightforward and unafraid of confrontation. After the backstage of Sister Act, the conflict between her and Disney exploded, likely from creative disputes during production, such as casting or script revisions. Those clashes made Whoopi so angry that she refused to participate in the promotional tour, the interviews, the large promotional events that the studio expected to boost revenue. She stayed home, did not appear on talk shows or red carpets, while other crew members were still busy. However, the film still became a major success thanks to word of mouth, rumours spreading from audiences who watched it and then invited friends and family to the theatre. The revenue exceeded $231 million on a $31 million budget, becoming the unexpected hit of 1992. Whoopi's insistence, no concession, no chasing advertisement, unintentionally proved the natural appeal of the work. Amid the tense meetings in Burbank and pressure from the studio, she held her ground, like Dolores in the film, strong and unyielding. And thanks to that, Sister Act was not just a comedy, but also a testament to the power of authenticity, even when backstage was full of storms. 6. Wendy McKenna did not sing for real, but Whoopi did. I know that anyone who watched the scene where Sister Mary Robert, Wendy McKenna, sang for the first time in the convent, a high, emotional voice that made the whole choir silent, would marvel at that voice. Many people even became enamored with that singing and believed that Mary Robert possessed that gifted voice, a burst from a shy girl into a gospel angel. But backstage, the story was different. Mary Robert had a very soft and light speaking voice, but lacked the power to sustain gospel-style singing. To keep the film's music from falling flat, the crew decided to have Andrea Robinson, a studio vocalist, dub the entire singing part. This method was very common in Hollywood at that time. It was just not mentioned much because audiences were accustomed to the illusion that everything on film is real. The opposite happened with Whoopi Goldberg. She did not have a professional singing background, but she sang her entire role for real. She practiced vocalization, breath control, and conducting gestures to match the choir, so that when entering the singing scenes, everything was still aligned with the musical track. The combination of Robinson's dubbed voice, Goldberg's real voice, and the gospel arrangement made many older audiences recall church ceremonies of the 60s, 70s, when singing did not need to be perfect, only sincere enough to fill the space. And perhaps for that reason, whether someone sang for real or not, the audience's memory still lay in the moment that voice burst out, like a small secret that the film preserved for its viewers. 5. The nuns' costumes were completely wrong, but nobody cared. If watching carefully, audiences knowledgeable about Catholicism would immediately realize that the nuns' costumes in Sister Act were not entirely accurate. The film said that the nuns belonged to the Carmelite order, but real Carmelites have different costume forms, especially in the headpiece and colors. In the film, the costume design was simplified for screen suitability, creating a clear black and white contrast so that when the choir stood in rows, the image had greater visual depth. Mary Robert was a rare character treated correctly. She was still a novice, meaning the costume was lighter and not a full habit like the nuns who had taken final vows. But the noteworthy thing is that audiences did not care. At the time the film was released, the question of right or wrong regarding religious costumes was not something viewers paused for. For older Americans, the image of nuns on screen was tied mainly to memories of parochial school, church hospitals, and Sunday ceremonies, not academic research about religious attire. The film's religious advisors also did not object. They accepted the adjustment as a compromise between authenticity and performance. And perhaps that kept Sister Act from falling into excessive solemnity. Wrong costumes were sometimes right for cinema because they helped audiences recognize characters in a single glance, something that stage and screen always needed. 4. Harvey Keitel had a year or two of destiny with nuns. The year 1992 for Harvey Keitel was a strange circle of sin, faith, and nuns. In Sister Act, he played Vince LaRocca, a mafioso chasing a witness who happened to hide in a convent. Keitel did not overact, did not turn the role into a joke. He kept the seriousness of a man used to living outside the law, but forced to appear in a story with a church-like tone. That small rhythm was enough to make the audience laugh because of the contradiction, but it still had depth. Also in that same year, Keitel appeared in Abel Ferrara's Bad Lieutenant, the film that swam straight into darkness. Priests, eroded faith, sin and redemption placed in a grey New York setting. Those two extremes came in the same year, making some critics jokingly say that Keitel stood between two doors. One door of absolute sin and one door of religion expressed through singing. Older audiences still remember 1992, not only because of the film titles, but because Hollywood at that time still dared to stand between two extremes without fearing that audiences would be confused. There were no content warnings, no strict audience segmentation, only one simple thing: the story was the center. Keitel walked between those two extremes, and sometimes that contrast gave Sister Act its own colour, soft but not shallow, humorous but not naive. 3. The work was adapted into a musical. Not every film has enough life force to return to the stage after going through cinemas and television. Sister Act did. In 2011, the musical opened on Broadway and revived the story in a way the film could not. Choir scenes were expanded, arrangements were longer, and actors had the chance to hold high notes longer on stage. Bette Midler emerged from that production, seen as the one who approached Dolores in a more modern way, but still kept the warmth of the film. The interesting thing is that Whoopi Goldberg did not play the lead role again, but returned to the West End to play Mother Superior. That role change was not to renew anything, but like a greeting by the person who once opened that door 20 years earlier. Viewers who once watched the film on VHS in their living room now brought their children, even their grandchildren, to the theatre, like passing down an old memory to a new generation. Broadway at that time did not lack adaptations, but Sister Act stood firm because it did not only tell a good story, but also had a parish quality, something many Americans could recognise from their own lives: church services, choirs, small communities where everyone knew each other. And perhaps that was why the musical was not a brand revival, but a new life cycle of the story. 2. The soundtrack created a cultural shock. Sister Act may have been a comedy about nuns, but what made it lifelong was the music. Mark Scheinman, who handled the music, did not choose the straightforward method of traditional church music. He took familiar pop songs, then transformed them into gospel, expanding them into thick arrangements that allowed the choir to have space. For many older American audiences, it was the first time they heard songs like "My Guy, My God" or "I Will Follow Him" in a ceremony-like atmosphere that did not lack cheerfulness. The film's soundtrack stayed on Billboard for more than a year, a rare thing for a comedy film. But more memorable was how it crossed cultural boundaries, from black churches to white schools, from local church performances to weekend parish festivals. The cast even performed live at real events, not for promotion, but because religious organisations and schools requested it. Some people said they heard the film's choral arrangements at weddings. Others encountered them at graduation ceremonies. That crossover was not loud, not a marketing campaign, only based on one truth: gospel could touch listeners without needing them to be believers. For me, Sister Act was not only a film, it was a time when old songs were rediscovered in a new context, not destroying tradition, only expanding it a little. 1. The film earned $231 million USD from a $31 million budget, then dominated the VHS era. Sister Act was released in the crowded 1992 film season, competing with heavy titles like Batman Returns, Lethal Weapon 3, and Basic Instinct. No one expected a film about nuns and a choir to break into the box office chart. But with a $31 million USD budget, the film ended its theatrical run with $231 million USD worldwide, becoming one of the most successful films of the year. However, the real life of Sister Act began after it left theatres. When entering the VHS era, which many families still rented from video stores for the weekend, Sister Act became the most rented tape of 1993. That might sound small, but for the generation watching films before the internet, a film surviving on the tape shelves was the true sign that it was loved. Summer nights playing VHS in the living room or church community screenings helped Sister Act go farther than cinemas could imagine. Not because it was a big film, but because it was an easy film to share. The film did not provoke controversy, did not need explanation, did not require prior knowledge. Just play it. Let the choir echo through small speakers, and let the room, whether a living room or a parish hall, complete the rest. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe so you won't miss our next videos. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.